In January 2022, Bolt raised $355 million in a Series E round that valued the company at $11 billion. Its investors included BlackRock, General Atlantic, and H.I.G. Capital. Its founder, Ryan Breslow, a 27-year-old Stanford dropout, became one of the youngest billionaires in the world on paper. Bolt's product was a one-click checkout button for e-commerce retailers. The idea was straightforward. Amazon had offered one-click purchasing since 1999. Every other online retailer required customers to re-enter their payment details from scratch. Bolt would solve that. One account, usable across every store on the network. The company's annual revenue at the time of the $11 billion valuation was approximately $27 million. The valuation was 392 times that figure. By February 2024, Bolt's valuation had fallen to approximately $300 million, a 97% decline in 25 months. The SEC had investigated Breslow over statements he made during fundraising. 3 board members had been fired. A $30 million personal loan taken from Bolt's treasury had defaulted. 4 separate rounds of layoffs had reduced the workforce by roughly a third. What this video gives you is the specific mechanism by which a $11 billion valuation gets constructed on $27 million of revenue, and why the investors who funded it, the journalists who celebrated it, and the board members who approved it all had reasons to let the number stand, right up until the moment they didn't. Breslow's observation about checkout was accurate. Cart abandonment rates for e-commerce sites consistently ran above 70%. Studies attributed a significant portion of that to friction at payment, the requirement to enter a 16-digit card number, a billing address, a shipping address, a CVV code, every time a customer tried a new retailer. Amazon had eliminated that friction in 1999 with one-click purchasing. No one else had. Bolt built a network solution. Retailers integrate Bolt's checkout. Customers create a Bolt account once, and then every subsequent purchase across any Bolt-integrated retailer completes in a single click. The model had a network logic. The more retailers accepted Bolt, the more valuable the shopper account became. The more shoppers held Bolt accounts, the more valuable the retailer integration became. This kind of two-sided network, once it reached sufficient scale, could compound. The company made the Forbes FinTech 50 list in 2019. By 2021, it had raised approximately $600 million across its first 4 rounds, attracting venture funds including General Atlantic, Activant Capital, and Tribe Capital. Breslow was on stage at conferences, profiled by Forbes, cited as a figure who had spotted something that Stripe and PayPal had missed. The core question, whether Bolt had actually reached the network scale where this logic kicked in, was the question that the $11 billion valuation depended on, and the one that the Series E pitch was designed to avoid. Bolt's Series E pitch to investors in late 2021 made specific claims about the company's financial condition and product trajectory. An April 2023 letter from attorneys representing WestCap and Tribe Capital, 2 of Bolt's earlier investors who had invested in the Series E, stated that Breslow had made material misrepresentations about Bolt's financial condition and product pipeline, resulting in Series E investors buying in at a grossly inflated valuation. The SEC subpoenaed both Bolt and Breslow over these statements in 2022. The financial reality of Bolt at the time of its $11 billion valuation was this. The company was generating approximately $27 to $30 million in annual revenue. It was losing approximately $200 million per year. The 80 million shoppers Bolt cited in its network figure represented accounts created across Bolt's entire history, many of which had not made a purchase through the platform in years. The claim, as presented, was not false, but it was structured to suggest an active user base that available data did not support. The $11 billion valuation was a 392 times multiple on revenue from a company losing $200 million a year, built on claims that the SEC later investigated and that Bolt's own earlier investors characterized as material misrepresentations. Two days after the Series E closed, Breslow published a series of posts on Twitter accusing Y Combinator of being a startup cartel that systematically suppressed competitors of its portfolio companies, specifically Stripe, by pressuring investors not to back alternatives. He named Sequoia and other prominent funds by name. The posts attracted significant attention, divided the venture community, and prompted several investors to examine more carefully what they'd just funded. Breslow stepped down as CEO within weeks, insisting the resignation was unrelated to the posts. He became executive chairman. The SEC investigation opened in 2022 and ran for approximately 15 months. In August 2023, the SEC stated it was not recommending enforcement action against Bolt as a company. Breslow was not explicitly cleared in that statement. The personal loan was the second fracture. In November 2021, at the peak of Bolt's valuation, Breslow had taken a $30 million loan from Bolt's treasury with unusual terms. If he defaulted, Bolt would cover the obligation and claw back an equivalent value in his shares. When the board asked him to repay it after he stepped back from the CEO role, Breslow refused. In February 2023, the money was swept directly from Bolt's bank account. Activant Capital, one of Bolt's earliest backers, sued Breslow in 2023 over the loan default. The lawsuit alleged that when board members Steve Saraceno of Activant, Arjun Sethi of Tribe Capital, and Brian Reinken of WestCap attempted to compel Breslow to repay, he quickly moved to the nuclear option, forcing all three off the board. Between March and April 2023, Breslow installed 3 replacement directors, all of them personal friends: a Grammy-winning music producer, a tech journalist, and a gaming entrepreneur. None had fintech experience. The Activant lawsuit was eventually settled. Bolt canceled approximately $37 million worth of Breslow's shares and bought out Activant's position. Multiple rounds of layoffs followed: May 2022, November 2022, January 2023, and December 2023. By February 2024, Bolt's valuation in secondary market transactions had fallen to approximately $300 million, 97% below the $11 billion peak reached 25 months earlier. The $11 billion valuation had rested on the assumption that Breslow's claims about Bolt's trajectory were accurate, and that the board structure around him was functional. Both assumptions collapsed within 18 months of the Series E closing. If you find this kind of breakdown useful, subscribing takes 2 seconds, and it means the next video finds you automatically. The SEC investigation and the investor lawsuits framed Bolt as a potential fraud. The more useful frame, the one that explains how this keeps happening, is structural. Bolt's $11 billion valuation was not a clerical error or a rounding mistake. It was the output of a system that had specific incentives to produce that number and very few incentives to challenge it. In 2021 and early 2022, interest rates were close to zero. Capital was cheap. Returns on safe assets were negligible. And institutional investors were allocating to growth-stage technology companies in volume. In that environment, a checkout company with genuine network potential, a credible founder story, and a large claimed user base could attract a valuation that bore no relationship to its current revenue. Because because the entire exercise was a bet on what the revenue would eventually become. A 392 times multiple was aggressive. It was also consistent with how late-stage venture was being priced across the sector at that moment. Every party in the Series E transaction had a reason to accept the valuation without stress testing it. Breslow's paper net worth depended on it. The early investors' existing positions were marked up by it. The late-stage funds collecting management fees on assets under management had incentives to deploy capital at scale, not to sit on the sidelines demanding lower valuations. The board members who approved the round were, in several cases, themselves affiliated with the funds investing in it. The journalists who covered the announcement wrote about a fintech unicorn founder becoming a billionaire, which was a better story than checkout company raises $355 million at a multiple that makes no mathematical sense. Bolt was not unique in this structure. Between 2019 and 2022, hundreds of companies raised at valuations disconnected from their revenue on the same logic. Rates were low, growth was the only asset worth owning, and the network effect story was a legitimate reason to value the future rather than the present. What made Bolt distinctive was the speed and completeness of the collapse, and the candor of the subsequent documentation. The investor letters, the court filings, the SEC subpoena that revealed what the valuation had actually been built on. In August 2024, Breslow attempted to reassemble the structure. Bolt circulated a term sheet proposing to raise $450 million at a $14 billion valuation, higher than the $11 billion peak from UK and UAE investment firms. The company's annualized revenue at the time was $28 million. The gross profit was $7 million. The proposed deal included a cram-down provision. Existing investors who declined to participate would have their shares bought out at 1 cent apiece. The venture industry responded with skepticism. The deal did not close on those terms. Bolt's $11 billion valuation was a number that the system that produced it had every reason to accept and almost no mechanism to challenge, which is precisely why the same number appeared again 3 years later on $28 million in revenue, and why understanding how it was constructed matters more than the specific details of this particular company. Bolt's valuation was constructed by a system in which every participant had an incentive to accept it, and none had the mechanism or the motivation to challenge it. The number was 392 times annual revenue on a company losing $200 million a year. It stood because questioning it was more expensive than believing it. Wonga ran a structurally similar dynamic for 12 years. Every loan it made before 2015 generated revenue and simultaneously built the compensation liability that eventually buried it. The company knew its affordability assessments were failing. The FCA found this in 2014, but continued issuing loans because the revenue kept coming in and the liability was someone else's future problem. When the FCA extended the eligible complaint window back to 2007, that future arrived all at once. The next video breaks down how Wonga turned £309 million in peak annual revenue into administration in 6 years, and the specific moment at which every loan the company had ever made became a liability it could not outrun.